What exactly does it cost to live off-grid? We're gonna do our best to answer that question right now. So that's one question we get asked a lot. Exactly how much does it cost to start an endeavor like this? That's always something that I dislike answering because there's really so many variables. A lot of it depends on the individual and what their needs are. We'll just kind of talk about what it costs us, and maybe that'll give you guys some ideas on what it might cost you.
And we can talk about some of the different options that we looked into when we were getting into this lifestyle. We'll also talk about some options that we've come across where you could live off-grid for little to no money. But I think before we get started, we kind of have to define what we're talking about when we say living off-grid, because it kind of means different things to different people sometimes.
Living off-grid could simply mean disconnected from the power grid.
Which that's pretty simple, straightforward. It just means that you have an alternate source of electricity other than the city power grid.
But it could mean disconnecting from all utilities, power, water, and some people even might want to go so far as to become hermits and have no internet, no cell phone, and just be completely disconnected from society. That's something you got to kind of define for yourself. Exactly what kind of off-grid are you looking for?
Yeah, and exactly how self-sufficient are you looking to be? How many of those basic needs are you looking to take care of on your own? So for us, we are looking to eventually be as self-sufficient as we can be, taking care of all of our needs on our property here off-grid.
We're running on 100% solar. We collect our own rainwater.
And we're currently building our own house. And in the future, we are going to be producing our own food.
I think one of the most important things, if you're thinking about off-grid living, is land.
Yeah, that usually goes hand in hand with living off-grid. Is a piece of rural property. There's some circumstances where you might not need property, and we can talk about that a little later on. But usually that's a pretty basic thing that you need.
And honestly, there's a lot to talk about with land, and that could be a whole other video.
Yeah, there's a lot that you have to consider. But basically, like, you want to know how much land you need for what your goals are.
For us, we needed at least 4 acres to be able to kind of do what we do out here in this county. But luckily, we're able to find up to 40, which is probably more than we need, but the price was right, and it gives us a little room to kind of stretch out if we do decide to grow more.
The price of land can vary so much depending on where you are, depending on what the property itself is like and what's around it, and I guess the economic conditions during that time. If you're planning on doing a lot of things yourself and building up that land, you can buy raw, bare land and develop it yourself, and you might be able to find something cheaper. That's what we were able to do.
So for our 40 acres out here, that was how much?
It was $15,400. Now, I have not seen any property really this quality of land for that price since then.
We got lucky with a pretty good price, but look around. Always do your due diligence.
Right.
But now we're going to talk about one of the most important things you got to consider, and that is shelter. What do you want to be living in? What kind of comfort levels do you need? I mean, you could literally build like a house that you might normally find in the city, but that's going to be very expensive, and it might not be super efficient depending on where you live. So what we did just to live out here is we picked up a fifth wheel.
Yep, a used fifth wheel.
A used fifth wheel. Someone's always looking to get rid of something here, so you can usually find a pretty good deal.
RVs, motorhomes, campers, trailers. stuff like that.
So the fifth wheel we're living in was about $5,000. Now, if you think about it, that's a pretty decent price for a place to live that's got pretty much all of the conveniences you could want. It's a ready-made, livable situation.
Yeah.
And in some parts of the country, you might just be able to kind of get away with that. Maybe put something like that on the land and then you're set. Unfortunately, we can't do that forever. And eventually we have to be living in here. For the meantime, it's worked out really well for us.
Yep.
As a kind of a temporary living situation. Now our main house is obviously going to be much more involved. We're still obviously working on that. We're over a year into that by now. And it could be another year before we're done. Who knows? But the cost, I mean, for a much larger living space will be higher than the fifth wheel for sure. But really not too bad for living. I mean, I think we've estimated the cost between $5,000 to $10,000. Let's say even if it hits $10,000 for a fully finished house, that's still pretty good, I think.
Earth bag building is one of the cheapest forms of building that we've come across. Because you can build domes with it, that actually saves a lot of money.
And our build is a little bit more expensive simply because we're adding extras, like we have underground rooms that we had to put like a ceiling floor over. We'll have lofts in each of the domes. That adds extra expenses, but you could actually build it for even a lot cheaper than we're doing it. Like I said, it all depends on what you want to do in your particular design.
It's all about kind of researching different options and figuring out what works best for your needs and the whatever regulations wherever you live as well.
Take those into consideration. Let's talk about maybe the next most important thing, water. And you absolutely have to take water into consideration when looking at land or whatever you want to do. Like if you're not connected to the city water, and maybe that is an option for you, but then of course you got that water bill.
What most people do living out in the country is they drill a well.
In some parts of the country, it might not be too bad. You might even be able to hand dig it. Wells could be kind of cheap depending on where you live, but here it is expensive. It would probably be, I would say, between 20 to 30 grand if we wanted to put a well in here. And there's no guarantee we would even hit water.
We've seen a number of people in the area that have had to drill their wells deeper or drill new wells or something because their water goes dry. So that's extra cost. Plus you got to think about electricity for pumping that well water up.
Also, you know, storing the well water, you usually need a tank to pump that water into. The pump itself, also maintenance over time. You know, you always got to take care of that well.
Yeah, so we looked into that and we got quotes on prices, but ultimately we decided to go with rainwater harvesting for our water needs.
For us, we felt it made more sense. It's not as big of a upfront cost, and we got to build some more infrastructure. There's a little bit else we got for our money. So, you know, we built this huge rain roof as a collection surface. Granted, all these materials were bought at a much earlier time, but I think the whole roof cost us about $4 grand in materials, which I don't even want to calculate how much that would be in today's economy. So $4,000 for the rain roof. It was about $3,000 for a couple of poly tanks, and that's what we used to kind of get us started.
And then a little later we built a cistern.
Now it's about $2,500, kind of experimental, this project. So just under $10,000 for our rainwater harvesting. And honestly, we're gonna probably invest even more money down the road.
The nice thing about that is that we can build some things, collect rainwater off of that, and we can use those structures for other purposes as well. So like our house we're building, we're gonna be collecting rainwater off of that. The roof that we built, we use for other purposes. We store things under there and we use it for shade and things.
So if you are thinking about rainwater harvesting, of course, things you got to keep in mind: catchment, how big of a catchment you need, what are your water needs, storage, how much is going to get you through the dry times, Again, I think we've done a lot of videos on rainwater harvesting, and there's a lot we can get into, but those are some things to keep in mind if you're gonna harvest rain.
It all depends on how much rain you're getting and how much water you use.
We live in the desert, but some people might be lucky enough to live near a lake or a river or a pond or something like that, which might be a water source you can draw from. Now, another thing you might want to consider is energy. Again, usually when people think off-grid, a lot of that is being energy independent, which is phenomenal. But solar can be an investment. Now, it's not as big of an investment today as it was back when we got it. Innovations are always happening with solar, so it's getting cheaper and more efficient. So our system right here cost us about 14 grand. And it was probably cheaper still because we were able to do a lot of it ourselves. But we have kind of a small but fairly efficient system. We have 15 320 watt solar panels here. All of our equipment is a little bit on the pricier side, but we wanted something good and efficient. So we have a couple of inverters, a charge controller, and we have 4 Tesla Model S batteries, which again was cheaper than buying new lithium-ion batteries. But there's always things to consider with that, and check eBay for good deals on batteries. Solar is kind of a tricky thing because you always got to decide, again, like with Elvis, like what are your particular needs? How much energy do you need?
And you also have to consider how much sun do you get?
What part of the country do you live in? Because here for us in southern Arizona, we get a lot of sunshine. For us, it seemed like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's pretty reliable. We don't need a ton of battery storage to get us through cloudy days because there's not a lot of cloudy days.
I think the trickiest part is figuring out what your energy needs are.
For some people, maybe there's alternative energy sources like wind power, hydroelectric.
And as far as solar goes, nowadays it's pretty easy. You could probably get a plug-and-play system. I think that might end up costing you a little bit more. If you're savvy enough, you can kind of piecemeal everything together and find the best deals on panels, find the best deals on the equipment, find the best deals on the batteries, and then if you hook it up yourself, you can save buco bucks. So when it's all said and done, the cost of us, like everything from the land to the house we're building, to rainwater harvesting, to the solar, it'll probably run us around 45 grand. Not counting, and don't get me wrong, there's been costs along the way, every little things that we need to pick up here and there for just living, everyday living.
But basic infrastructure, I guess you could call it.
So, that's a decent investment that not a lot of people can throw in there right away. But once you make those initial investments, off-grid living can be pretty cheap. So it's a pretty sweet lifestyle if you can just make that initial investment. Or if you can maybe make the land investment and then build up on it over time. Now let's say you don't have that initial cash investment. There are other options available to you if you don't want to go our route. You can do it for $0, just like Kane from Kung Fu, or maybe Bruce Banner from the Hulk, and you just wander around the country going from adventure to adventure.
That's a pretty harsh way to live, but if you are looking for a more permanent living situation that is off-grid, that doesn't cost very much, there might be some other options. There's always volunteer opportunities, internships, where you can usually find a place to live at a place and do some work there, get some experience, and have an off-grid kind of experience sometimes, depending on where you are.
If you can do that, that might be a good way just to even see if the lifestyle is right for you.
Right. Another option would be an intentional community. Like maybe you want a community of people who live off-grid, and there might be these types of communities, and there's something that's already kind of set up. It might cost a lot less than if you had to do that all yourself. This actually just came in the mail today, a book that I bought from Paul Wheaton.
Paul Wheaton?
Paul Wheaton.
I'm sorry, I'm such a nerd.
If you don't know Paul Wheaton, he is the creator of Permies.com, which is a great online forum for permaculture and sustainability and a lot of these kind of off-grid, ideas and self-sufficiency. So if that's something you're interested in, you might want to check out that website. But also this book called Skip. I think I haven't read through it yet because I just got it, but kind of just looking through it, I think it's an excellent idea. It's all about connecting maybe young people who don't have the money to invest in a property that they want to develop, but connecting them with people who do have that, and also giving people the opportunity to build the skills necessary to live a self-sufficient, sustainable life on a property. So I think that's a really fantastic idea, and it might be an option for a lot of people. So something you might want to look into if you're looking for some ways to save some money.
So I hope we've really given you some ideas on what it might cost to do this solo, maybe some other options, things you haven't really thought of. But we just wanted to give you an idea of kind of like what it cost us, so that maybe it gives you an idea of what it would cost you if you wanted to do this type of lifestyle. So if you have any more questions, feel free to leave those down below. You can also reach out to us on Facebook. We even have a Facebook group, Green Setters by Green Dream Project. You can join that group. Good place to ask questions or post things, and it's a nice little community that you can do to get help.
Be sure to stay tuned to our channel and continue with us on this journey of living off-grid.
Build video coming up real soon. This is developing and taking shape. You don't want to miss a thing. All right, we'll catch you on the next video, everyone. Let's go.